All right. Good morning. My name is Mike Ramsey. I'm a district attorney. Thank you for today as we in the first of maybe results of our ongoing pandemic unemployment insurance fraud investigation in Sweden. In the last week, we have charged and arrested some 15 individuals. 12 of those individuals were Butte County Jail inmates. Those folks, along with the outside helpers, have perpetrated a rather large fraud of nearly $360,000 worth of unemployment insurance money that they should not have gotten because they were inmates in the Butte County Jail. Basically, how to get here would be the first question. Obviously, there was last year an extension and an expansion of the unemployment insurance program in the state of California, in fact, all over the United States. In particular, pandemic unemployment assistance program from the federal government came down to give additional monies to those folks that were traditionally not able to have unemployment insurance. People that were contractors, part-timers, people that were gig people such as drivers, contractors, people were having the ability to kind of work at part-time, which normally would not be our traditional unemployment insurance. When that was opened up, the Employment Development Department of California was with administering that. They wanted to get money out, as the mandate from the federal government, and wanted to get it out quickly. They did a streamlined version of application. So basically, that streamlined application, online application, allowed people to advantage the system. In particular, these folks that were in and out of the jail took advantage by saying, "Hi, I am now putting in my claim for employment insurance in the pandemic employment assistance program." What's that mean? Folks were able to, in the streamlined application, that I haven't been able to employed during this period of time. That was true, but what they out was the fact that they were in county jail at the time. That was a lie to say on the employment application were available for employment. As such, they upwards of $20,000 apiece. Part of this was to use outside helpers on the outside, and you can see at least 3 folks here, inmates, but helpers on the outside that in through computers or cell phones or electronic devices put in application for these inmates and others to say the person is eligible. And they were aiding and abetting this fraud. So they, in addition to the inmates that they were assisting, were charged and arrested. To have this application process certainly made this attractive to not only these folks, but scams throughout California and actually throughout the United States. It is right now over 1 billion, that's a billion with E, in fraud, just as to inmates, both in local jails and state prisons, of to these people and their others. Obviously, this is a drain upon the taxpayers. It's upon those folks in particular that were deserving, are deserving of the expanded insurance program. What we saw is because that ED was over, then reactive to a number of the fraud allegations and started shutting down people that did the unemployment and survive. You and the public seen on various newscasts that are legitimate users, the expanded unemployment, able to because these fraudsters have plugged the system, as it were. We discovered this last spring, summer, look, as we were getting information that a number of the Butte County Jail inmates, an influx of money put on as criminal, put on their books. So money that goes onto the account at the Butte County Jail for things such as commissary, additional top ramen, candy, personal goods, toiletries. Suddenly these people were flushed, these inmates were flushed with money having been put on their books. Investigation began. That investigation led to somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 400 cases that we were taking a look at. And taking a look at those cases, it's obvious that we needed to narrow down our focus at the first, and looking at some 4 inmates. These are the of those inmates to be caught and charged. Determining what each case, these fraud cases, were available for prosecution, you have to understand that had to prove was false information used to apply for these benefits. In this instance, people saying, no, I'm available for work, which is false because they were in prison. Because the applicant, the person who did claim, in some instances, that was not what was going on. The lawyers were helping these folks, their scheme. Additionally, not all inmates that had names used for the fraudulent scheme became identity theft victims themselves. And which, to the third element that had to be able to prove, did the person know that they were had these applications submitted in their names? And then, of course, who received the money from the application, and were there ongoing claims for the unemployment? In looking at these cases, investigators in the district attorney's office learned that claims were intertwined with each other as various rings of fraud were identified. It was a vast spider web of connecting people that were these frauds. You might notice the different colors here. Those colors represent a ring within itself. We have the green ring The yellow ring, these folks down here are individuals that at this point we don't see any interconnection to the others, other than had some folks on the outside that were helping them. You can note that when the investigators learned that the inmates used friends and family, they would set up these accounts, and as you may know, the monies are distributed on debit cards, Bank of America debit cards. To prove the cases required, or evidence to prove the cases required, that get a bunch of information, not the from ED and from Bank of America. Many surveys were also authored in previous months to go to the homes of some of the helpers and inmates and get additional evidence for the first 4 that were selected. That these folks were in jail, and on each one of their kind of mugshots, as it were, there you see what they were in jail for. It ranged from possession of a stolen car, domestic violence, a lot of drug sales, people that were in the jail on drug sales, plus once they got into the jail, they were trying to bring drugs into jail, and warrants along with a firearm, all the way down to Monica Ruggiero, who, as you saw yesterday, was held to answer in the Butte County Superior Court charge of read the full gamut of different kinds of crimes. He's said, I'm ready to be employed. We're not employed, and in fact, we're applications that were backdated. In other words, it says ready to be employed and have been unemployed since March of 2020. Well, they were in jail in March of 2020, and so this was obviously the problem. When the majority of, and we also have noted ID theft, people had come to us and saying, received a bunch of and requests from Development Department, EDD, at my address in names of people I have no idea who they are. That was part of the scammers attempting to use good citizens' IDs and their addresses to further this scheme, as we could go to next. Yeah. Next slide. That one. And this is a warning to the public that may have noticed that we're getting this strange information coming in, being mailed in from the EDD. Many of the folks were just kind of throwing it away and saying, well, it must be a mistake here. Well, we want to warn the public that they're in danger of having their IDs lifted and in danger of having their information used by a scammer to set an account with EDD. And suddenly they are on the hook, as it were, for EDD money out. We are encouraging the public these times, and not just in these times, but all times, to make sure that they are protecting themselves from unemployment fraud, but also from ID theft. Monitor your credit cards. Are there ability to go on to credit sites and want free credit report, and make sure that you don't see any sort of strange information, accounts that you not open up. If you do, immediately contact those card companies. Report any increase in mail coming in from E, and we are asking that this EDD site that you can, as noted in the press release, that can report to EDD that this strange information is coming in. If you believe that you are already ID theft, we also ask you that you report that to District Attorney's Office at 866 DA fraud, or scan any suspicious documents into an form, an email, and send that to DA fraud at Butte County net. That would be the email address. Also, we ask folks to check with their employer. If the employer says, hey, what's this? I see that you're saying you were unemployed during this time, and you're still employed, report that to us so that we can take an effort to quash this thin dollar industry that is out there right now. Part of what happened has been somewhat ameliorated, somewhat taken care of by EDD. It's been called Real ID. Previously, before September of 2020, the EDD required you to prove who you were. Now there is an ability for EDD to reach out and make sure that you really are who you are. California, unlike 35 other states, not have a cross-reference to jail and prison records. So they had no ability, the state EDD had no ability to know that, for example, Miss Ruggiero, who had opened up an account and she was available for employment, was actually held on a murder charge, and therefore highly unlikely to be available for employment. In fact, was not available during the time said she was available. She was in. With that, I'll open it up to any questions that you may have, and I'm going to ask if you have questions, because we're live streaming Facebook right now. Could take that microphone and ask the question. I have it up here, but just go ahead and take it. Just he'll get it back to you.
Hi. So you have caught those 15 people. Are you investigating? How many more cases would you say you're investigating within the jail?
We have probably another at least 4 we're looking at.
And you mentioned that the color signified that those people were working together. So the green color meant that those people you believe were working together, the yellow, and then the other without the color were individual?
That's correct.
Okay. And then let me just see here 1 second. So with this money that was taken, how is that going to get recovered? Do you know what's going to happen with that amount?
Yeah, that 369,000 plus. Once these folks go through due process, once these folks are convicted, should they be have to prove under reasonable doubt, then they would be on the hook for restitution of those amounts. Obviously, it is much better for the state to have stronger fraud prevention tools and prevent the item from the money from going out than trying to claw it back, as it were.
Gotcha. And then my final question is, you mentioned that EDD in California did not have access to cross-referencing the jails and the prisons.
Right, like some 35 other states in the United States had cross-reference tools, computer tools. It's rather shocking. California, leading edge, Silicon Valley computer on the front line,
Mhm.
not have such ability, such a kind of obviously easy way to check.
And then, sorry, I actually have another question.
Sure.
Some of the inmates you said were victims of identity theft. Maybe they didn't know that somebody was opening accounts in their names. Do you know how many were related? That was the case for
What I can say at this time, because those are ongoing investigations, or unless none of those were up there
okay.
on that.
Wasn't on there.
No,
Okay.
These we believe we can prove that those 12 inmates showed they knew what was going on. We have, in fact, one of those folks was bragging in letters to outside folks how easy this was and how money was just flowing. $20,000, $30,000 on cards.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Ramsey. Ryan with Channel 7 here. Going back to the kind of color scheme you had for these different groups, you said that they were working together within the jail. Would you mind kind of elaborating specifically how they were working together?
Certainly. What they were doing, they contacted each other in the jail or making contact with outside parties to get information out on other inmates, other innocent inmates, social security numbers and personal identification, and working with their outside, I won't say handlers, friends, to get money on various different debit cards and then get that money back into the jail or all to other persons outside the jail in the expectation that when they got out of jail, they would have that money there. Unfortunately, there's an old statement, no honor among thieves, and so some of these folks got ripped off by their outside folks.
Understood. And you did list a few different examples of how these people might have gotten this certain information that contributed to this fraud. Was there a most common kind of way that these people were getting this information?
It was kind of the gamut. A lot of it was talking to dorm mates, pod mates, and so forth, and saying, "Hey, you want some money? Just give me your social security number, and get that out to some of the folks. We'll open up an account. We'll take a portion of your account, and we'll take a portion, and everyone's happy except the taxpayer."
Of course, yeah. Going into my last question too, you were mentioning how the system was kind of plugged due to people like this who are doing fraudulent claims. Do we know here in Butte County how many people that might have affected, or people who received the money, these inmates taking it away from X amount of people?
No, I mean that is, and that's subject of investigations at state and federal level. Just trying to figure out, one, the extent of the fraud, and and the how many people, legitimate people that have stopped, again, very difficult to tell, because as you've seen on recent press interviews with these innocent folks, they're on the phone for hours and hours and hours trying to get through. And it's this balance of trying to, okay, let's get the money out to the right people, but let's put in some safeguards to make sure it doesn't go out to the wrong people. And unfortunately, the legitimate people sometimes get caught up in that, and caught up in that backlog, get caught up in that belief that they may be subject to being a fraudster.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Do we know the extent of how much of the public could have been impacted by identity theft with this going on here locally?
Do we say
Do we know the extent of like how many people, like just citizens, may have been impacted by like identity
I
theft?
mean, that's, we know because we talk to folks, and I've seen it on your own stations, of people being very frustrated. We see that there are a number of legislatures that have written letters to ED saying, my God, get your act together. I've got people that are pounding on my door that are obviously legitimate, and they're not getting their legitimate unemployment insurance money. I think it was a Democratic assemblyman was quoted recently, says, we got a lot of messes to clean up. Another assembly person that had called the unemployment agency a rat's nest of incompetence, citing constituents still stuck waiting months for benefits after promised improvement. But understand, the EDD was just overwhelmed by this. And understand also that these are not, what we're looking at is just our local folks, but there are larger, bigger rings, and we know that transnational gangs have gotten into this area. The federal government is handling those, out-of-country actors from Africa, China, Russia, have seen and exploited with concern. Where we see some of that is the fact that the citizens that get 12 different pieces of mail from EDD in other 12 different other persons' names. What's going on?
And you've gotten a lot of those?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that makes the investigation. I want to congratulate and highlight some of the people that are there, the investigators. This is just in hundreds of hours of investigation that is fairly complex, also fairly frustrating, because that backlog about that backlog also affects us in a get information from EDD on the claims, information from the Bank of America on claims. And it should be noted that the Employment Development Department does have a fraud division with investigators, and they at first tried to take this on. You have 17 criminal fraud investigators for the entire state of California. These are the EDD fraud investigators. You see that already overwhelms this. And that's where a number of district attorneys, myself, Sacramento DA, number of DAs had stepped up and said, listen, we can't let this fraud go on. We can't let this dirty money be impacting into our community, because we've seen these are folks, and the folks These are folks that have, I think the newer term is criminogenic tendency. And those criminogenic tendencies, i.e. the criminals, they have a tendency to use that money to further additional criminal activity, such as buying drugs, guns, and other nefarious activity and stolen property.
Are you investigating only the people that is in jail now, or the people that was in jail since the pandemic started?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. I thank you, and please, to the community, let's be vigilant out there. To those that will be our next target, I would suggest that they do right. Turn themselves in now. Make it easy on yourself. Thank you.